Hi, everybody. This is your friend and host for Life and Finances with Sacrifice and Service, Anthony Burrows. Now, today we're looking at credit. That's financial credit and its availability or the lack thereof during this pandemic in our country. Now, I was going through the newspaper this previous week, and fortunately enough, at least I was able to purchase a paper. But now, when I go through the paper, my tendency is like grab the business section, glance at the sports. If there's something local and interesting, I'll read it. And then I look at one or two of the comics, and I guess that's it. Now, the Tribune business section had two interesting stories that jumped out at me. It said BOB hit by central bank's 3-year ban. Now, we know BOB is Bank of the Bahamas, and then Bahamas Air's revenue off a staggering $32 million. Now, during this pandemic, such headlines are concerning, but they are expected. Given the world economy is in such a massive tailspin, you can't expect anything. Then on top of that, 45% of the workforce is out of work, and that totals up to about 54 million people. Thing is, when you think about it, never had I ever fathomed that such a thing would happen in my lifetime. I was one of those who figured that, hey, everything had passed. Even though we know the Bible says can be pestilence and all of those sort of things coming on, but you just figure, for whatever reason, that things like this was now behind us. You figure it'll just be earthquakes and wars and things of that sort. Now, what we must bear in mind as this pandemic continues, the more persons die, the closer it's going to come to your doorstep and to my doorstep. See, this is no longer just statistics. We got what, 6,000 people now? And in reality, if you do the real math and check, that means it's about 18,000 persons out there infected. See, and every death diminishes us as a nation, our level of productivity, and our level of getting ahead as a nation. It's all impacted because we're losing talent. Now, before we take a closer look at the two stories that interested me, we're going to go through some financial principles. First one, so while we're talking about credit, remember, a thriving economy needs credit. And I ain't talking about consumer credit, TV, car, and all those sort of things. We're talking about business credit now. And that begs the question, what is credit? Now, I did my research all over, but I say, you know what, let me just throw whatever together as you look at it. Now, we say credit, first and foremost, this is the ability of me or you or a business as a customer to obtain goods/services before payment, and it's based on trust that payment will be made in the future. You know that cousin or that friend or whoever will come borrow money and will never pay back, but that's not the case here. It's based on trust that payment will be made in the future. Now, some say that credit is the basis for capitalism and democracy because this is how businesses and a country expand. Now, business credit assists with, first and foremost, increasing productivity and broadening an economy. Let's look at Bamboo Shack, that is, Aquapure, Blanco, and some of the other local businesses. You see new buildings go up, they purchase new equipment, hire additional staff, they are expanding the economy through credit. Now, the thing is, when businesses who take out loans fail, most fail because they still have a shortage of capital, the business plan wasn't sound, and a lot of times it's poor management. And the thing is, after you've taken out a loan as a business and you fail, it's a great impact on the availability of credit and more money available for persons. See, you're using up people's savings, so there's less credit available for other businesses, and there's a reduction in our level of productivity. Now, where does credit come from, or how you create credit? That's by people like me and you. We underconsume, we do without certain things, so we put about 10%, 15% into our rainy day account, and then the banks in turn loan out our deposits to businesses and other persons. Now, What tends to mess up credit is that a lot of times there are forces outside of the banks that causes and force banks to, hey, lend to this one, lend to that. The large brother might call and say, hey, lend to that one. Family member might call and say, hey, loan to that one. Government might call in and say, hey, lend to that one. And the thing is, we know these people who they may not who will be loaning to don't have any credit worthiness. You see, they don't have any, and when you lack credit worthiness, that means you don't have any history of repayment. You don't have no assets to back up what you're borrowing, and then you're probably running an unprofitable business. Now, if you're running a profitable business, then that gives you credit worthiness. See, and the purpose of business loans normally to move companies to a higher level, broaden our economy. Now, if you're taking out a loan as a business, and then it's a struggle to make those payments and you have to cut back here and there, it affects productivity for the nation as a whole. Then a lot of places say, hey, they can avoid the banks and they take out bonds. Remember, that's another form of loans. And the last thing I want us to look at when we look at this sort of thing is rights offering. And that's a situation where you are a shareholder or owner, you dump in additional money into the company so you can raise more capital. Now you see this a lot happening, and it's normally a bad sign, but usually with good intentions. And companies do this usually to like weather a storm, like say how the pandemic is, they might borrow money so they can keep meeting payroll and other expenses. And the whole intention, they might say, well, hey, we're going to save some jobs. Now, I'm just going to read some excerpts from the article. Say, BOB hit by central bank's 3-year bar. Now, in the caption, they have still prohibited from new commercial loans. Top executive admits past risk problems, and banks don't want to think of tourism woes. Now, Bank of the Bahamas top executive admitted its risk management had been poor, as he revealed the central bank has blocked it from taking on new business borrowers for 3+ years. Kenrick Brathwaite is his name, the BISEC listed institution, that's Bahamas Industrial Stock Exchange. The managing director told the Tribune Business that events before his appointment, well, that's interesting, was unable to currently rebuild a commercial credit portfolio that he believes remain critical to the bank's future prospects. And he went on to say, we still have a restriction from the central bank with regard to new commercial credit. The restriction has been in place for the last 3 years, and we cannot take on any new commercial clients. That's still continuing, he disclosed. Now, that part of the business, meaning the commercial loan part of the business, is really critical. And to us, for our evaluation and survival, we are not able to build. That's because of history, and history suggests that we are not done the things we should have done with regard to risk. And you know, when you're loaning out money, that's a risk. Now, we'd like to start building more commercial relationships, but we're still seeking the central bank's authorization. Hopefully they'll get it. Now, Mr. Brathwaite, who was appointed to the post some years after Bank of the Bahamas, required 2 taxpayer finance bailout to survive. He's the first senior board member to actually talk about it, but the bailouts were in 2014 and 2017. Now, many observers, especially the Bank of the Bahamas minority shareholders, boy, you know, be holding that ball, who collectively hold just under 18% of its equity, will, though likely regard Mr. Brathwaite's comment as an understatement given the spectacular destruction of investor value that left more than $144 million in accumulated losses on its balance sheet at June of 2020. Now, the taxpayer had to for the bailout, spend an estimated $300 million, that's in those in between 17 and 14, $300 million in propping up the Bank of the Bahamas through a combination of 2 bailouts, which injected government bonds, $100 million, remember bonds is borrowed money, and $167.6 million respectively into the balance sheet, plus a $40 million rights offering. Remember, that's when persons who already own the business putting in more money to make up the 100% borrowed. Now, the Treasury and NIB currently own 82% of the Bank of the Bahamas. Now, as we continue with the article, as you keep glancing, Mr. Brathwaite said that While an economic rebound would enable Bank of the Bahamas to recover at least some of these provisions, he did not expect one to occur before June 2021. All right. He added that a significant chunk of the $1.85 billion, really is $2 billion worth of commercial bank loans placed on deferral during COVID-19, and that's throughout this whole country, representing around 1/3 of all outstanding credit. And that's, the credits tend to be consumer loans, business loans, and so forth. So that represents 1/3 of it. Now, he said, we are hoping that when this economy spins around, we'll be able to reverse most of that provisioning that's affected us tremendously. 40%, actually I'd say 45%, 54,000 persons are unemployed, and look like that's going to be around for a while. The hotels seem as if they are not going to open up. We haven't even begun to think of it, what it will look like in the banking industry if those hotels do not open. Wow. You're talking most of $2 billion, that's those loans, becoming non-performing. A lot of the $2 billion happen to be government employees, and fortunate for that, they'll get those set back because government going to continue to pay its workers. I don't think it's as critical as we think it is, but a lot of the $2 billion will be hotel borrowing, as it's going to affect delinquency numbers for the entire industry, that's the banking industry. Mr. Brathwaite voiced hope that the Bank of the Bahamas will be able to start reversing some of the loan loss provisioning during its 21 financial year's fourth quarter. But it remains the most vulnerable and exposed commercial bank due to its pre-COVID-19 problems. And these are the things, so we see the issue and the idea of credit at work, and if we don't do our homework, the impact that it has on an industry. Now, we also talked about Bahamas Air and its situation. We know that it's saying, the article went on to say that Bahamas Air revenue is down $32 million. But, actually it said staggering $32 million, I guess, to get people come in and read. But we see Delta, during its second quarter alone, lost $6 billion. The U.S. government gave them $3.8 billion and then loaned them $1.1 billion. That's a rights offering right there, if you ask me. American Airlines has lost $4.3 billion and haven't reported for their third quarters yet. U.S. airlines have been given $25 billion to bail them out, and you can guarantee that there's more to come. Now, bear in mind that we in the Caribbean and Central American countries, we pay an annual subsidies to these airlines in turn for them bringing visitors. You see, as we go forward, the Bahamas Air article basically went on to say, hey, they don't have the airlifts, they're having less traffic, and their flights are down. The amount of flights, let's say they had 30 flights a day, they are now down to like maybe 10 flights a day. So all of those things have impacted revenue. So now, as we look at it, remember financial literacy in your personal situation. See, people believe that when you look at it as a nation, as a business, and then as an individual, that you're supposed to run your economics differently. But no, it is always, the idea is to operate as if it's an individual, which is to have this mentality that, hey, don't spend everything that you collect, and you save some, put it away for that rainy day. You see, savings is a buffer / I like to say, protection for economies and individuals against unexpected events. Now, economists and those have been saying borrow, and they turn this notion of saving as a joke nowadays because they always want to, hey, keep the economy going, and they think spending is what did it. Now, here's what I want us to take in mind. Last three things, your takeaway is pursue financial literacy. Begin saving, and to help us get out of this financial constraint, wear your mask and stop the partying. So until next time, may the God of heaven and his Son, the Christ, bless and prosper you.